It is that time of year where the days are getting shorter, they're also getting a lot colder, and everyone's getting themselves a cold, including myself. This is the time of year where you need to start looking after your motorhome and put it to bed if you're not going to be using it throughout the cold winter months. In fact, if you are going to be using it through the cold winter months, then depending on when you do, I would recommend you still do this. When you're not using it, definitely need to winterize your motorhome, campervan or caravan. Now I'm going to go through a few things of what I do to prepare our motorhome for winter. The most important thing that you can do to winterize your vehicle is to remove all traces of water. Now you don't have to be, when I say all traces, you don't have to be too precise. But what the thing is with water, when it freezes, it expands. And when it expands, if it can't move, can't expand, it then breaks things like your pipes, like your boiler, that kind of stuff. Things you don't want to break. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the water from the fresh water tank, which is just underneath that chair there. Now your fresh water tank might be in a completely different location, but ours is just here. This little blue twisty thing is how we get inside. And we got some water in there. Inside I can see the water pump and the plug. Just going to reach in, find the plug and pull it out. And that is it for the fresh water tank. Now the next thing we need to empty is the boiler. Now our boiler is in the wardrobe just here, look. So open up the bottom of the wardrobe and there is our boiler. Well, I have 3 places which I need to attend to in our boiler, and of course yours might be completely different. This is a 25-year-old motorhome. First of all, I have this thing here which is called the frost protection dump valve. So it's in the up position, being held in by a peg at the moment, because if I release the peg it's going to dump all the water, and I don't want to do that just yet. If it's cold outside, the switch inside will trip and will dump all the water out of the boiler, protecting your boiler from getting frozen and cracking. Then there is a valve there which allows me to open a tap and lets extra water out. And I have another one there. Also notice there's a junction just there made out of brass. Well, in Heimers, which our motorhome is, they were renowned for breaking that junction there, because it used to be made out of plastic. During the winter months, a little bit of water got trapped in there, even though you drained it down, and eventually they would crack and leak. So they designed someone designed a brass one and had 2 fitted, because we had 2 junctions. So let's get rid of this water. I'm going to just take the peg off, see if it actually does drop down. No, it doesn't drop down. So in normal circumstances, when it is cold, this would actually drop. So if I just press it, that's it, the water's now dropping, running out, I can hear it. And while it's doing that, I'm going to also open up the 2 valves until, well, fully open. And this one. Now the water should all be running out now. So I'm not done yet. With the power off, I need to open the taps up. And what I'm going to do is position the tap halfway between hot and cold. That means that both water lines, both pipes are going to be open to the air. There's a bit of gurgling. There's an arrow on my tap as well to tell me where it's halfway, so I could just level it out there. And that's all taps, including the shower. Bathroom sink tap. Bit of gurgling. And what it's actually doing is letting the air in, so all the water is actually going to run back down into the pipes and hopefully into the boiler and the fresh water tank. Shower, done. Now I've also got a fresh water filter connected to the kitchen tap. Now that is installed underneath the sink here next to the bin, right at the back there. So I need to get all this out and remove it. Right, that's done. Now that will be coming back into the house with me, so it won't be left in the motorhome to freeze over and break. There will be water in it, of course, which may make the removal slightly messy. So be aware of that if you have one of these. I've also got these tiny little caps that go on the end of the filter, but the filter needs to replace every year anyway. Now go outside and open the grey waste tap. Now if it's got any water in it, then empty it at the proper place, such as a campsite. And keep it open so the air can circulate in there and it can dry out. So that is all the water jobs done, except for one. That is where I drive the motorhome back to storage. So as you're driving along, all the water is going to find its lowest point. So leaving the taps open, that's what I do. I let the water try and settle down and jiggle it all down to its lowest level. Now then, I'm going to move on to the gas. With the gas turned off at the bottle, turn on the gas lines in your motorhome or caravan, just like these ones are. Now, over to the burners and then start one up. Done. Now the reason why I've just burnt off all the gas in the pipelines is because butane doesn't like the cold weather. In fact, you can't use it during the cold weather. It seems to splutter and spit. And it can cause blockages in the pipework. So that's why I did that. However, we haven't got butane, so I don't tend to do that. We've got refillable gas, and that's propane. So it's a kind of a habit, I suppose you could say. Now, one thing I do every time we put it in storage, not just for the winter, is to keep the fridge open and the freezer box. Now, our freezer box has got a bit of a spring on it, so I keep it open with this ice tray, just like that. And then when the door is shut, well, it won't shut because the ice box is keeping it open. The only other thing I do is keep this door open. This is the door into the bathroom, and this is just let air flow through, because this is the only place where we've actually noticed mold growing. We had it on the roof in here and in the cupboard just there, but anywhere else we haven't noticed any mold, and that could mean that we've been very lucky. I don't drop the bed down, I don't puff up the pillows or remove the pillows or move the cushions away from the seating or anything, you know. Don't do any of that, just leave it as it is. I also don't use any moisture absorbers such as these things, or you can get them in different varieties, but these basically they collect all the moisture out of the air and turn it into water basically. Now there's two reasons why I don't use those. First of all, you're not in a sealed motorhome. If you take a look at this vent here, or these two vents, there's one just there and there's one here. Your vents might be different, of course. They're open to the elements. So there's a piece of plastic just here, but the other side of it, that plastic is open. So the air is flowing through the motorhome constantly. And when you're in your warm motorhome, you stand there, yes, you do notice it. The other thing is that these things only seem to work when the weather is warm. They're absolutely useless and don't collect any water during the winter months. And I think why that is because warm air holds on to the moisture more. So there's more moisture in warm air rather than in cold air. The other thing I don't use is a cover. We don't cover the motorhome. Various reasons. There are pros and cons with having a cover. The main thing about a cover is that, yes, it protects your motorhome from the elements and green mould and all that kind of stuff on the outside. However, if it's not fitting snugly and properly, or even if it is, it can still damage your motorhome by rubbing in the weather. Wind and whatnot, and the rain. But also, what you're after is ventilation in the motorhome. So you want that air to flow. So if it's not a breathable cover, then you should either remove it, make sure that there's some ventilation, or get one that is breathable. Now, if you're lucky enough to have electric hookup throughout the winter, say for instance the motorhome campervan is stored on your driveway, then you may be tempted to use some sort of heater in the motorhome to keep it a little bit cozy, to keep that dampness away. And you know, it's not a bad idea as long as you've still got that ventilation to keep because it's still going to be cold outside and warm inside, and that can cause condensation on the inside. So as long as there's like windows open, a little bit of just a small crack to keep the air flowing, you should be okay. Now my problem is that our 25-year-old motorhome doesn't have a smart charger, which means whenever we plug into electric hookup, the charger is constantly charging our leisure battery. Even when the leisure battery is full, it will still push the charge. It might only be a little bit when it's fully charged, but it still pushes it, whereas a smart charge will just stop. And that is what you're after. You want after a smart charge because you don't want to kill your leisure battery over the winter. So hopefully that has helped you winterize your motorhome, campervan or caravan. So if it has, then give us a thumbs up and maybe even consider subscribing. Until then, see you out on the road. Bye-bye.